Gaming set 76140 with 148 pieces. This is Iron Man's Mech Suit. Something I really like about this set was the ending piece, which is the blaster on the back of the suit. I still haven't tested, and I'm gonna shoot it at the box. That did not work. Okay. Alright. Yay! I'm gonna tread one more time. I think I lost the piece. So there are three clear, though kind of smooth studs that you put into the gun like this. Boom. 1, 2, and 3. Ta-da! And then you can shoot it with launching the back feature. This is the stomach that you can open up. You can open up and then take out the minifigure. And then there is a Iron Man helmet, and on the back there are 2 faces to him. And something that it's not really concerning, but I saw in other sets how usually on things like this, on the Mr. Frost set, he is standing on a Lego platform and not on his legs on squeezed between 2. It's not the middle. The middle isn't one like kind of slab. So it is harder for him to stand. Like, it's more wiggly and more like, free form than other suits that I've made. But it's not a problem. But it's just something to notice. And then the fingers were definitely hard to figure out, but they are definitely really cool how you can move the fingers in all different shapes and sizes, or not shapes and sizes, but all in different directions. There is a thumb and 3 fingers on both hands. The feet, you can adjust the feet. You can pretty much adjust any part of the body. With the arms, there's the shoulder, there is the middle part of the arm, and then the actual hand that you all attach. Same thing with the legs. There is the hip, then there is the middle part, and then there is the leg. Then there's the leg, and then the foot. So yeah, that is the Iron Man Mech Suit set. I hope you guys enjoy this. Down below in the description, I will leave a link so you can buy one for yourself. And that's it. See you guys next time on LEGOkiddo, and happy breaking. Hip, what do you call it? The abdomen thingy. What do you call that? The middle back bit. Okay, I'm gonna shoot them. And then there's the gun feature. Wait, let's just try one. 3, 2, go. Okay, never mind. And then there is the gun feature when you shoot the the glasses.